Hey, what's up guys? So last week, one of my favorite plugin developers, Teletone Audio, just announced their first bass plugin called Retrograde Bass. And Retrograde Bass is aimed at bottling up the warm, vintage, analog tones of late 60s session bass players, and Teletone Audio sampled a vintage precision bass using a 1968 Super Reverb Amp, recording over 10,000 samples to create a bass plugin that tops all the other vintage bass plugins I have ever tried. And really, this is a super robust bass plugin because it has 6 different signal paths, including direct, ribbon, tube, dynamic, warped, and even a synth path, combining all that with 9 different velocity layers and 5 round robins to create a super powered vintage bass plugin that perfectly fills the low end of any production. So just taking a look at the landing page for Retrograde Bass, you can see that this plugin is actually $79 and it works with the free contact player and the full contact player, of course. It's $79 and this thing is dubbed a bass odyssey because you're able to get not only the late 60s vintage sounds, but also it's super useful for modern productions, especially with some of the innovative things that they've added to this specific bass plugin. So just going down the landing page here, we can see that the target sound for this was the 1968 session player using a precision bass. But the cool thing about this plugin is they've recorded it 3 entire times. So you have a palm muted library, and then you have a lightly palm muted library that they recorded a whole second time where you can actually control it with your Modwheel. And as you lift up on it, it's going to give you a slightly lifted, more resonant strike on the strings, something that I haven't seen any other bass plugin do, giving you more versatility, control over your bass sounds. And then for the third round of sampling, they have open sustains, allowing the strings to fully resonate uninhibited, giving you a full bass sound. And then as far as the details of what Retro Bass actually comes with, they've recorded all of the different mic arrays through a 1968 Fender Super Reverb, which sounds really nice. And then you get 4 vintage mic signals: direct, ribbon, dynamic, and tube. Now each one's going to have its own character and sound to it. Direct's going to give you the cleanest. The ribbon is going to give you a more rich, warm tone with a lot of mid information. Then we have dynamic that's going to give you more low end information and adds a nice bite to it. And then finally a tube mic signal that has a lot of attack and more aggressive forward sound. And then for the modern tools that I was mentioning earlier, you have 2 things that they've added to this bass plugin: a warp signal that has been manipulated, warped, bended, pitch shifted, and processed in such a way to give you a more lo-fi, characterful sound that you can add to these other mic signal layers, as well as a synth signal path that allows you to blend in 3 different synth waveforms: a square, sawtooth, and a sine wave, giving you more low-end sub and really completing the entire bass sound within your track. Okay, so that's an overview of what you get with the Retrograde Bass, and now I want to take a look at this sound example that I've created for this video, and this is Retrograde Bass using the Sustains library. I believe in my last video I used the muted library, so I wanted to give you a closer, deeper look at the Sustains library and play through some of these different presets because you get over 70 different bass presets with Retrograde Bass. So let's just listen to this sound example and then we'll dive into the plugin itself. So that's what it sounds like in the context of a full track, and I really like Retrograde Bass for more indie electronic sounds, bridging the gap between era type sounds and more modern productions. It just sounds so good for these kinds of tracks. And you'll notice as I was playing the track back, I only added the Greg Wells Mixcentric and just a stock Logic limiter to it just to glue all the sounds together and bring up the volume a little bit. But within the context of this track, I don't think I've ever had another bass plugin to really achieve this indie electronica sound that I've been going for. Artists like the XX and Tycho, artists that really inspire me, and the music I personally listen to a lot, Retrograde Bass has really allowed me to explore those sonic territories in a way that I couldn't because I only had bass emulated plugins that kind of got to that style but didn't really fit that sound like this plugin does. So let's open up Retrograde Bass now and just take a look at all that's entailed within the user interface and what you get with Retrograde Bass. Okay, so what you get with Retrograde Bass is 6 different signal paths. You get the direct, and then you get 3 different mic signals, and the modern warp signal and the synth signal. And how it works within the interface is you can click to turn off or on any of the different signal paths. So if I wanted to turn off the direct, I can just click it here, and then you can see that it puts it in more of a dim state, signifying that it's now turned off. And now I just have the synth path turned on. But the cool thing is you can combine any of these different mic arrays that they've used to record the bass and blend the tones together in any way you please. So if I wanted to use the ribbon mic, I could turn it on here, and then let's just solo this out to hear what it sounds like. And then if I want to hear the dynamic, and then tube, and then warped. So you have a lot of different tone options to play with and paint your sound with using Retrograde Bass. And then within each and every one of these signal path options, we have dedicated controls for pan, low pass filter, high pass filter, and then we have this button right here where we can turn on whether or not this signal path is sent to the effects down here in the right hand corner. So if I wanted to use a direct, but I didn't want it to go to the effects, I can just click this button. It's dimmed and now turned off and won't be sent to the effects. I'm going to turn the direct off for now, but I want to just really clarify that it's not just one signal path at a time, but you can actually layer them on top of each other. So let's just go ahead and experiment and maybe layer the dynamic path. I'm going to turn it on and keep the warp path on and see what it sounds like. Without the warp path. So the warped actually adds some low end. Let's try the ribbon mic. And then with tube. And then let's see what if we like layer some of these different mics together. Let's try dynamic and tube together. And you can also pan these different ways too. So if you wanted to pan the dynamic to the left, and then the tube we can pan to the right. And then if we wanted to take some of the high end off on the dynamic, we could do that as well. So you can really layer and play with these different signal paths as much as you like to get the sound that you want. Okay, so moving along the interface, we have a dedicated tone knob over here, and if I play it back, we can just tweak it to see what it sounds like. It acts like a tone knob on a real bass instrument. We have a drive knob on the other side. And then we also have controls for EQ over here for treble, high mid, low mid, and bass, as well as an output, trim knob. Then we have the sensitivity knob that's going to favor either the lighter or the louder samples within the sample set. So if we turn it to the left, it's going to be for the lighter samples that it favors. And then to the right, the louder samples. And then we have an amp noise knob that adds some floor noise from the amp signal itself. Below that, we have mono mode and hammer on. And then finally to the right, we have all the effects within this panel here that we can click through. So for saturation, we have slapback, room reverb, flanger, compressor, chorus, and a warble effect. And as you click on each one of these, it's going to give a different value depending on which effect is on and how much of the effect you're applying. And then within each of the signals, that effect is either sent to it or it's turned off and it's not sent to the effects. And that's the same way with each and every one of these different signal paths. So right now, the only effect I have applied is this room reverb that each of the signal paths is being sent to for effects. And if I play it back, we can hear it. And I'm actually just going to command click the sensitivity knob here to be in the middle so we get the original sound that we had. Maybe I'll turn the drive down. So the room knob is going to control that room reverb, and if I pull it back, we hear the more pure tones. And then what I'm going to do is actually just double click the room for now and turn it off. You can turn off any one of these effects by double clicking it. And then you can turn them on also by double clicking it as well. But what I want to take a look at is the individual effects. So if we go to saturation and turn it on, this is what it sounds like. Then we have slapback. We just did room, so I'm going to go over to the flanger now. Compressor. Chorus. And then warble. And you don't have to double click to not hear them anymore. I just did that to go through the list, but really all you have to do if you don't want to hear that effect is pull the knob down, and then you can do that for each and every one of these so that it's no longer being sent to that effect. And the last two are good. So if we want to get back to the original sound, I'll just leave the room reverb on. And then we're back to that sound. So I'm just going to close out of the options panels for each of these signal paths. And now I want to take a look at the different presets because it comes with over 70 different presets. So I'm going to leave this layer alone and just pop out of it and go to this other layer that I've prepared for the track. And using this separate layer, I've pulled up a instance of Complete Control where I've already favorited a bunch of different presets from Retrograde Bass. So if I hit the star here, it's going to isolate just the favorited presets. And let's go through some of these different presets for Retrograde Bass. So that is some of my favorite presets using Retrograde Bass, and as you can see, this is a highly versatile bass plugin. It truly is a bass odyssey, allowing you to get super old, warped, analog vintage sounds, as well as really modern sounds that work in any kind of track that you wish to make with it. I think the market has been needing something like this for a long time, with all these different controls, the ability to paint different tones with all these different options, and give you a truly analog styled sound packed with a ton of character, giving you the edge and the inspiration to get going right away with new inspiration experimenting in different sonic territories. Anyways guys, that is my look at Retrograde Bass. It's something that I highly recommend, and it's going to be my go-to bass plugin going forward for all of my tracks, because it really does just give me exactly what I need to craft different bass tones, fill out my low end, and warm everything up. Alright guys, that's pretty much it. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.